You breathe approximately 23,000 times per day. And if most of those breaths happen through your mouth, research suggests you are systematically undermining your sleep quality, immune function, dental health, blood pressure, and cognitive performance, without ever knowing it. Mouth breathing is one of the most common and least discussed health risks in modern life. Research shows this pattern is more consistent across populations than previously understood. Research published in Acta Physiologica Scandinavica established that the nasal passages produce nitric oxide, a potent bronchodilator and vasodilator, that is delivered to the lungs with every nasal breath. Nasal breathing increases oxygen absorption by up to 18% compared to mouth breathing. Every mouth breath bypasses this system entirely. The consequences compound across every nasal breath you've never taken. In this video, we are going to see the full cascade of health consequences that research links to chronic mouth breathing, from sleep disruption and dental damage to cardiovascular effects, and what the evidence says about transitioning back to habitual nasal breathing. Research shows this pattern is more consistent across populations than previously understood. Studies find these effects are measurable and reproducible across independent research groups. Most people treat breathing route as irrelevant. Air is air, right? The physiology says otherwise. Your nose is a sophisticated air conditioning and filtration system. It filters, humidifies, warms, and bacterially cleans air before it reaches your lungs. It also slows airflow to allow better gas exchange. Your mouth does none of these things. Bypassing the nasal system is like bypassing your car's air filter. The engine still runs, but the costs accumulate. Sleep is where mouth breathing causes the most acute and well-documented damage. During sleep, habitual mouth breathing drives sleep-disordered breathing, ranging from snoring to obstructive sleep apnea. Research shows that mouth breathing during sleep reduces oxygen saturation, disrupts sleep architecture, activates the stress response repeatedly throughout the night, and impairs deep sleep. This is why chronic mouth breathers often wake exhausted despite adequate hours in bed. The dental and craniofacial consequences of chronic mouth breathing, especially in children, are among the most visually dramatic effects documented in research. Long-term mouth breathing changes facial structure, narrows dental arches, causes crowding of teeth, and produces a characteristic facial elongation pattern. These changes can be permanent if mouth breathing is not corrected during developmental years. Research shows this pattern is more consistent across populations than previously understood. The nitric oxide mechanism is the most physiologically important advantage of nasal breathing. Nitric oxide produced in the paranasal sinuses is delivered to the lungs with each nasal inhalation. Once in the lungs, nitric oxide dilates the bronchioles and blood vessels, increases pulmonary gas exchange efficiency, and has antimicrobial properties. Research shows nasal-delivered nitric oxide is a primary component of the innate immune response in the respiratory tract. Oral health is another domain where mouth breathing causes documented damage. The mouth requires moisture to maintain a healthy bacterial ecosystem. Mouth breathing causes chronic oral dryness, which reduces saliva production, raises mouth pH, promotes harmful bacterial overgrowth, and significantly increases the rate of dental decay and gum disease. Studies show mouth breathers have substantially higher rates of cavities and periodontal disease than nasal breathers. When researchers catalog the health consequences of chronic mouth breathing across body systems, the scope is remarkable. Few habits have as pervasive an effect across as many physiological domains simultaneously, which is why correcting it produces improvements across multiple systems at once. Research shows this pattern is more consistent across populations than previously understood. Studies find these effects are measurable and reproducible across independent research groups. The cardiovascular effects of nasal breathing deserve specific attention. Nitric oxide produced by nasal breathing is a potent vasodilator. It relaxes the smooth muscle in blood vessel walls, reducing peripheral vascular resistance and lowering blood pressure. Research shows that breathing practices that emphasize slow nasal breathing produce measurable reductions in resting blood pressure, and the mechanism is, in part, the continuous nasal NO delivery. Transitioning from habitual mouth breathing to nasal breathing is a trainable process for most adults. The framework involves addressing any structural obstruction, retaining the nose for daily breathing, and applying mouth taping during sleep, a practice with emerging clinical evidence and a physiological rationale. Research shows this pattern is more consistent across populations than previously understood. Studies find these effects are measurable and reproducible across independent research groups. The health improvements from transitioning to nasal breathing follow a measurable timeline. Some effects, like sleep quality improvements, appear within days. Others, like structural dental and facial changes in adults, require months of consistent practice. Research shows this pattern is more consistent across populations than previously understood. Studies find these effects are measurable and reproducible across independent research groups. The daily practices that transition breathing to nasal dominant are specific and manageable. Start with the simplest and highest impact: nasal rinsing and sleep taping. Add breathing exercises once the first two are established. Research shows this pattern is more consistent across populations than previously understood. Studies find these effects are measurable and reproducible across independent research groups. The evidence here is robust, replicated, and directly relevant to your daily health choices. Recognizing which mouth-breathing consequence is most affecting you helps prioritize the intervention. The entry point that matters most to you will also produce the fastest motivation to maintain the change. Research shows this pattern is more consistent across populations than previously understood. Studies find these effects are measurable and reproducible across independent research groups. The evidence here is robust, replicated, and directly relevant to your daily health choices. Mouth breathing is one of the most pervasive and under-recognized health habits in modern populations. The research documents its effects across sleep, oxygenation, oral health, immune function, craniofacial development, and cardiovascular tone. The nose is the correct breathing organ. Retraining the body to use it consistently, especially during sleep, produces measurable improvements across all the systems that chronic mouth breathing has been silently compromising. 23,000 breaths per day. That's 23,000 opportunities for your body to get an 18% boost in oxygen efficiency, a dose of immune-supporting nitric oxide, and a nudge toward parasympathetic calm. Or 23,000 missed opportunities if your mouth is doing the work your nose was built for. The research is clear. Your nose exists for a reason. Use it. If today's video helped clarify something, share it with someone who needs it. Most people never see research summarize this clearly.